If you're new to the channel, get ready to be confused by this introduction. I reviewed a lot of cartoons that you can claim have a mean-spirited tone once in a while. For a cartoon reviewer, I don't like to throw that expression around like candy, but I've seen my fair share of harsh and unpleasant stories over the years. Ones with neglectful parents, rotten kids, downer endings, the worst best friends you could ask for, and adult sitcoms that are more childish than children's cartoons. As long as the tone has a point and it fits the vibe of the world that's been established, I can let it slide. But what if the world created is inherently mean-spirited to the point of being numbing? May I introduce to you Charles Darwin's worst nightmare, CatDog. This show is the Mac Daddy of meanness. It's the one thing almost everyone brings up about this show, that you have to go in expecting it to be dreary and hostile. Even its biggest fans remember getting scared or upset by it a couple times. So naturally, in this sensitive environment we call the 21st century, CatDog gets a lot of backlash on first impressions. But I guess the thing you want to know from me is if there's a point to all the cruelty, if it's justifiable, and as always, how it came to be this way. CatDog was the creation of Peter Heynen. Like a lot of other Nicktoon creators, Peter came from a background of art rather than animation, illustration to be more specific, and by the mid-90s, he'd come up with the idea for a superhero called CatDog Man, a superhero with a cat and dog's head, but he later truncated the idea to just a cat dog. He was inspired by watching cats and dogs in his neighborhood fight as a kid, and recent news stories he'd seen about conjoined twins. When he pitched the ideas to Nickelodeon, they liked them. Actually, that's underselling it. They adored this idea as if it were their own flesh and blood. LB Hecht in particular had an unrealistic amount of confidence in it, predicting it would be the next Rugrats. It's a good idea for a cartoon, I think we can all agree on that, but even before its first season even aired, he'd allegedly planned for Peter Heynen Productions to produce 100 half hours. For reference, Steven Hillenburg's SpongeBob SquarePants was pitched and entered production around the same time, but it only got 6 half hours up front. Be prepared to see me compare these two shows a lot. CatDog always struck me as being like SpongeBob's less successful older siblings. So, having all that pressure to produce tons of content about a show that was meant to play off kids' sympathies and have the characters experience the worst of both worlds, that some of the pressure in producing it would make it onto the screen. Worse still was the way Nickelodeon planned to air it. While their other shows would air a new episode once or twice a week during a regular season, CatDog would have 2 sneak peeks, one as a short preceding Good Burger on pay-per-view in January 1998, another after the Kids' Choice Awards on April 4th, and then the first season would be turbo spammed throughout October. The new fans don't benefit from that because they'd only have one episode for 6 months, then have to clear a whole month to watch the rest of their favourite new characters' introductory season. And those new fans? There weren't many of them. Ratings were way lower than anticipated, critics then just as much as now were critical of the moody tone of it all, and it didn't make it to the fabled 100 episode milestone. 65 plus a 3-part television movie, which fell out of regular airing on May 18th, 2001. They had 5 more episodes to air, and they aired 1 in 2003, 1 in 2004, 1 on the Nicktoons network on May 7th, 2005, and 2 still haven't been broadcast in the United States to this day. What am I supposed to use, the YTV air dates? Since the ending, CatDog's reputation has still been mixed. It's got a cult following, like every cartoon of the era, but it's hard for it to win over newcomers, or people who never liked it to begin with. Morbid curiosity has made it consistently worthy of discussion and debate, and I guess I'm adding on to that right now.
It just doesn't get any better than
One fine day with a woof and a purr, a baby was born and it caused a little stir. That baby was a CatDog, a being with the head of a cat on one end and the head of a dog on the other. They don't have a long-lasting job, but can afford to live in a stylized 2-story house with a view of the town of Nearburg. Try to convince me they aren't on social welfare. Whatever their financial situation is, usually bad, their life is difficult. Cat can never fit into society because of Dog, and Dog is always dragged away from his fun by Cat's misguided attempts to succeed in the world. So while the pair often get on each other's nerves, they're also the only ones who can understand each other on a deeper level. CatDog are a cat and a dog. Everyone knows they get into fights quite easily. But they're also brothers, and siblings are people you're forced to be best friends with. There'll be days where you hate each other, but you go through so much together and share so many of the same experiences that you can never reject them. That's to say, cat and dog aren't always likable, but they have some depth to them by their very nature. Cat can be haughty and cunning, just like a cat, but is only so because the world has forced him to be like this. When push comes to shove, he'll only think about money, fame, and or revenge on those who've wronged him. There are times where he's a flat-out villain protagonist, the message being to not be like Cat. He's not an impossible character to root for, it depends on if they give his actions enough justification for the story at hand. Dog can be stupid and overly affectionate, just like a dog, but is treated like the heart of the show. While Cat acts like an adult, Dog just didn't grow up, it seems. He's got the mind and therefore innocence of a child. That makes him a more relatable character to the target audience, or anyone who wants to have a good time in this world, heaven forbid. Indeed, he's my favorite character in this show. Not to say his stupidity and canine instincts can't get intrusive, but his enthusiasm for everything adds some levity to the experience. I'm a dog person, if you couldn't already tell. Also living with them is Winslow, a blue mouse who likes hanging out with them, if only to stir the pot and see some shenanigans unfold. Welcome to a large fraction of the characters that largely exist to make the show more stressful to watch. Winslow is defined by his function, and it's a useful function, but you feel stuck with him whenever an episode focuses on him. The Greasers are a gang of dogs who beat up CatDog every day. Cliff is the John Travolta sound-alike and head of the group, Lube is the Robert De Niro sound-alike and dense one, and Shriek is a poodle with the squeaky, whiny voice who has a secret crush on Dog. They're bullies, they're prejudiced against CatDog's appearance for the heck of it, but they each get spotlight episodes where they try to humanize them. It's always a double-edged sword, because you know they're just gonna go back to their old tricks. With Cliff, I can't buy it because he's the ringleader, but with Shriek and Lube, they do have their sensitive sides. Lube for much the same reason as Dog, he's too simple-minded to be truly hateful. They're sometimes bothered by Eddie, a loudmouthed squirrel who wants to be a part of the Greasers. He's another, oh god, this guy's on screen, kind of character. Good segue into Rancid Rabbit. I hate him like my own taxes. His function in the show is to be contrived. He will exist to be a powerful figure to discriminate against CatDog, and that role will change to whatever's most fortunate for our heroes. He can be a lifeguard, director, cop, even President of the United States. And even when he's defeated, I usually just don't feel like it was worth seeing him again. Rancid Rabbit is not quirky or in the territory of love to hate, he's just a misery merchant. That works, but I can only take away the unappealing aspects. But don't give up hope, there are some more positive side characters, including Randolph, a British movie star and news anchor that CatDog keep bumping into. There are some edges to his personality, but if your catchphrase is "I love it," then you're not so bad. Mr. Sunshine is another guy who keeps popping up in multiple jobs and settings, and while he always seems bored and jaded, he's still a heck of a lot more pleasant than you'd expect in an ironic way. How do you come up with a green shirtless guy with a monotone voice and make him one of the funniest characters? Lola Caracola was a later addition, a Mexican bird who conducts scientific experiments, usually on CatDog. There are 3 possible reasons she was added. They were asked to add a girl, they were asked to do their own Sandy, or they were asked to make a character that wasn't guaranteed to make the episodes more frustrating. They managed to succeed at all 3. I like her well enough. Mean Bob is the hero of Dog's favorite science fiction franchise. He may be mean, but at least he's also Bob. Not much of a character until very late into the show, but it's always useful to have this sort of world building. Characters gotta have an interest, their own favorite show or something. At the bottom of the side character list is Mervis and Dunlap, some teenagers in Nearburg who are inexplicably best friends with CatDog. While they aren't bad characters, they don't exist as individuals, only as side characters for the sake of being side characters. You know how they say everyone's the main character of their own story? Mervis and Dunlap would still be cameos in their own sprawling epic. So that's the main and supporting cast, and while the amount of villainous characters is smaller than you'd expect, everyone except Dog tends to have a chip on their shoulder over something. There's always this underlying hostility to the world they live in, but why does it have to be written this way?
I like doing stuff that makes the CatDog mad because it makes me happy. Their madness makes me my happiness.
This is one of the nastiest shows I've ever watched. You don't need to have watched all my stuff yet to get that impression. Even those that start nice then get mean, they're wrapped in a relatively kind foundation. CatDog is dark, dirty, violent, oppressive, and scoffs in the face of relaxation from its very first episode to its very last. You have to be on edge when watching an episode for the first time, because you don't know if or when they'll show something kind of vile. Not much is flat out inappropriate for kids, but that might be part of the problem. I thought a lot about former Nickelodeon president Geraldine Laybourne's stance on cynicism in children's shows, that in some sense, it can be useful to teach them that life could be a lot worse. While she wasn't the network's president while CatDog was being made, there is that undertone of, let's just make a hellish world to make the kids glad they're being fed in the morning. One negative effect of this headspace is that you could be projecting a ton of your own negative feelings onto an impressionable audience, and if their lives are just as bad as the characters, if not worse, then they're way better off switching to a more optimistic show as a form of escapism. I think that's a key factor as to why CatDog, and a lot of shows that have that dreaded reputation of being mean-spirited, are always going to be so divisive. People will remember what it was like to be upset by these cold-hearted characters in oppressive situations with downer endings, hoping the next episode will be more uplifting, but being sadly mistaken more often than not. Mrs. Laybourne was right in that there's a time and a place to make the audience feel better about themselves, but shows like CatDog that do it all the time are almost numbing in their approach. It can get pretty difficult to care about what the characters are going through at a certain point. Everyone does something underhanded, no one's a saint, they're all going to hell, but I think CatDog and Cerberus would have a lot in common. Depending on the viewer and their experiences and situation, this stuff might be healthy to watch. You can't be coddled by Blue's Clues forever, it's an unforgiving world out there. If you haven't been bullied before but see it on CatDog, you won't be as traumatized when you're bullied yourself. That's one of the things CatDog gets right as this sort of thing can get. Every step of the way, it makes it clear that this is not a friendly world, that if you lived in it, you should be wary of people that may want to scam you or beat you to a pulp. It builds character and makes you more aware of the world without putting you in any danger. And once in a while, showing that there is love in the world, CatDog's brotherly love in particular. Everyone's diet for escapist versus realist media will be different, and I make it no secret which side of the scale I bend towards, that even in the harsher media I consume, I prefer when there's a lot of comedy to add some levity. And to its credit, CatDog has its share of clever jokes.
Hey, come on, guys. Hey, leave me out of this, eh? I'm neutral, like Switzerland, huh?
It's not focused on being loud and annoying, it speaks to a broad level of potential viewers instead of dedicating minutes at a time to yelling or stupid noises. You can call it a lot of bad things, but it would be hard to call it patronizing. It's not like everything that can go wrong with a cartoon, they just got one thing super wrong most of the time. All this armchair child psychology is to say, this show is getting a beefy worst list from me. But don't take this as I don't see any value in this show. And how can I be mad if the visuals are making that apparent? Calling CatDog a pretty show would be misleading, but there is an abstract beauty to how consistently dingy they make it. The background artists understood the state of Nürburg. Nothing looks like it's been washed or maintained for a year. Like every show that has these stylized background principles, it gets cleaner and less pronounced in later seasons, but it's a good sign when, from the start, the art department know the kind of show they're stuck on. The character animation and designs are suitable. I like the Bart Simpson owl, they even recolored him yellow later on to drive the reference home, or a little tribute for predicting them. CatDog is an iconic design, but be prepared for the storyboarders to be loose with the proportions. It feels weird when they share profile shots, but I get why they have to be like this. What's weird for me is when they almost make CatDog look like a snake. The joke question they always posed was how did they go to the bathroom, which was a clever addition, giving the toilet humor a free pass, but I was interested in knowing how far they could stretch. Before a season 1 episode showed me they can stretch across the entire Earth multiple times. This was the first Nicktoon to premiere after the closure of Games Animation and opening of Nick Animation Studios. I did a recent video that partially went into the ways this changed the culture of Nicktoon's production and quantity of output. So what a way to set this next era up for long-lasting emotional responses.
Why is this happening? I didn't even tell
Season 1, in which CatDog gets stuck in a dead-end job, stuck on a traffic island, and stuck in outer space. A lot of stucky situations, especially if you remove the first T. This year, the writers and artists were most keen on exploring the logistics of CatDog. They've just been handed a once-in-a-lifetime pair of protagonists that are physically inseparable, like every episode is automatically doing the cuffed-together trope. They were keen on mining Cat's depths and seeing what he'll do to improve his situation. Sometimes it involves kicking Dog out of his life or suppressing him, sometimes it's by tricking Dog into having beliefs that will benefit himself, and other times, it's various attempts to become filthy rich, emphasis on filthy. But it never works. They always go back to square one, and all the hassle you see them go through is for nothing. Nothing but the message that family sticks together. Dog is always depicted as an annoying creature to be around 24/7, but while later seasons play out the stupidity to typical cartoon oaf levels, Season 1 episodes wanted to explore his canine instincts. He doesn't chase the garbage truck every week because he's an idiot, but because it's a stereotypical thing for dogs to do. Same with hoarding items to play with them, getting freaked out by new people moving in nearby, and consuming more than they know where to stop at. Like, way more. There's a fair bit of weight gain and other modifications to their physique throughout this season. It's all for the cartoony fun of it, to be clear, but it quickly gives off the impression that they've gone from a crime against realism to a crime against nature. Other characters were also still evolving. In the pilot, Winslow driving a wedge between Cat and Dog could be seen as a mistake, like he wasn't trying to make Cat unhappy with his situation. But throughout the rest of Season 1, he becomes a little schemer, trying to make them fight for his own amusement. But as long as some of the heat burns him by the end, that's fine by me. The Greasers are a little different in that they get slightly more depth throughout the season. Cliff spends some time as a two-headed freak himself, Lube becomes CatDog's personal servant after they save him, yup, they did one of those plots, and Shriek's crush on Dog is revealed quite early on. Does this make it less bad to see them beat up CatDog? Of course not, but it shows that they have some storytelling potential individually. And Rancid, he lived up to his name from the beginning, moving on. Most of the time, I can let a rough first season off the hook because they were still figuring things out. It's not like this is where CatDog peaked for me. The rest of the show is funnier and has more consistently interesting ideas presented, but it's good that they cared about their characters from the beginning, that they were already testing their protagonists in ways you wouldn't be able to do with any others.
Hey, CatDog! Never mind.
Season 2, in which Cat joins a fascist cult, Winslow becomes an ABDL, and my theory about Dog being gay is swiftly discarded. This one ain't without its cheap shots, but I think it's the best season of CatDog. They were eager to try new things, like a 3 shorts format for some episodes, where there'll be 2 that are relatively standard length, with a 2-minute short in the middle or at the end. The only thing comparable is the fan mail segment in the series premiere, which was only made to fill time. This was a deliberate attempt to vary up the ways they could tell stories, but they gave up easily and went back to the tried and true 2x11 format. Or did they? Season 2 houses the first half-hour episode, the Christmas special at the end. All but one of the NickToon's festive specials up to then had been this length, so this makes sense. If you thought the show was too much in its natural format, you might be worried about spending a full half hour with it, but I think the Christmas special is solid for what it is. There's more episodes in that range of quality that are solid. Whether they've got a clever idea and write it to its natural conclusion, fill it with gags that aren't too cruel and unusual, or continue to drop the characters in darker situations. I've already made mention of the fascist cult Cat was tricked into joining, but there's also the one where Cat tries to eat Winslow, the one where they prepare for a false apocalyptic prediction, and the one where CatDog gets stuck in a movie, the episode ending with Cat having to get assaulted in every screening for the rest of the movie's run. This one gets worse the more you think about it. But that's just a sad ending to an otherwise fun episode. Remember fun? You get that here. There was a drive to vary up the setting, even the time period. We get more flashbacks to what CatDog would have looked like in different eras of history. There was one in Season 1, but they got more joy out of the practice here. There's also a few moments scattered throughout where they let Cat be victorious at something, and sure, sometimes they'll rip that victory out of his hands, but the fact that he's able to get those at all in a place like Nürburg, and more consistently now, makes it feel like there is some upward trajectory to CatDog's lives when you watch the show in order. This is where sharing some crew with SpongeBob was starting to be more apparent in their writing. Not that this is quite as good as SpongeBob from this time, but you can see the commonalities. They use the same womp, it's basically a shared universe now. I kind of like Season 2 as an overall package. It still has some bad episodes, but they found ways to make the show more attractive without discarding the edge. I can't wait to see Season 3 throw a wrench into this. Season 3, in which Nearburg becomes silent, futuristic, and infested with Peruvian vampire ticks. Now usually by the third season of any TV show, the staff have worked out all the kinks and their work is at its most efficient. Late enough to still have the raw spirit of the first season, but early enough before it's forced to shake things up to an unknowable level of success. And in good ways as well as bad, Season 3 of CatDog is CatDog at its most CatDoggiest. The good ways include this being where the supporting cast is at its strongest. If you watch the show in its official packaging order, you're introduced to Lola in episode 46B, Gorilla My Dreams, then you get her proper debut one segment later in 47A, Sweet and Lola, and then the second half of the season is completely out of order, but that's beside the point. Point being, they integrated her into the cast quickly. Her shtick of studying animals lines up well with CatDog being a peculiar creature, and she's shown to have a friendly dynamic with them beyond that. Everyone else that counts is given some time in the sun. They really liked pushing Mervis and Dunlap this season, and while there still wasn't much to them, it shows they wanted these characters to make their mark, even if their mark is always just going to be those guys. The Greases continue to be given more personal journeys. We learn that Shriek comes from a rich, posh family for one thing. Again, I see what they're trying to do, but if they're tied to a status quo and always going to go back to beating up CatDog, then what's the point in having them learn big things? Season 3 is definitely the most violent. You've got the infamous teeth episode, but as a whole, the slapstick is a lot more brutal throughout this run. They must have been on good terms with standards and practices to let some of this pass. Sometimes it's so shocking it's hilarious, but there are points where it's so shocking it's just shocking. And while Season 2 was kind enough to give Cat a break once in a while, now he's back to being a punching bag more often than not. And the best part? There are now stories that don't even rely on cartoon logic. There's just total breaks in logical storytelling only whipped out just so Cat suffers more. There's an egregious example I'll bring up later, but I think this offers a look into what they wanted to do with Season 3. CatDog with everything dialed up, more character and more danger, and more bowling. They've got an irregular hangout now and gutter balls, possibly a reference to the Rocko's Modern Life episode of the same name. What can I say? I like bowling, and I'll point it out any chance I get.
Yo, dog, I wanna be your friend. Eh? What do you say, pal? You's gonna be Rocky's friend?
Okay.
Season 4, in which we learn about some of CatDog's parents, the origin story of Mr. Sunshine, and which character Peter Hainan's children liked most.
Everybody likes dog best.
We like cat better.
I hope they're successful business people now. This final season is only 8 half hours long, 3 of which make up the TV movie, CatDog and the Great Parent Mystery. But remember, quantity over quality. I think this season's a decent send-off. The Great Parent Mystery is an important part of the show to remember whenever it be discussed. It's got very sweet intentions that shine through in the conclusion, that CatDog may never know who or what birthed them, but they were briefly found and adopted by a Yeti and Frog, making them valid parents. That's great! I don't like the middle portion with the Southern family, it's just hick joke after hick joke, and Cat and Dog making the situation worse just by being there, until they make the Hatfields and McCoys look like besties. Everything else about the movie is good on paper, but that's Season 4 in a nutshell. Fire, then ice. Fire, then ice. Fire, ice, water, boiling water,
Evaporation.
They're leaving you with a memory of the show that's accurate but not idyllic. It would have been easy for them to just do more of the same, but there were some areas explored that I'm now happy got some attention before it was too late. Winslow has a niece and nephew who are just as skeevy, Dog is given an episode to hang out with Mean Bob, and the very last episode is a doozy. After one experiment in Season 3, 4 was fully digitally inked and painted, but you wouldn't be able to tell much of a difference until the finale, Meet Dog's Friends. It turns into a trip. A dark and messy one, but the art department was seeing good use and improvement up to the very end. And I think that's the key to CatDog's success stories. They're better at showing an idea than anything else, and here are 15 of their best ideas. Cat Gone Bad is a novel take on Cat's character, turning him into an alley cat, who are depicted as beatniks. It's neat to see him let his hair down for a change, even if the consequences are still severe. Full Moon Fever is the same kind of story but with Dog becoming a werewolf. By giving him traits that the Greasers would find appealing, it makes his ultimate decision to stick with Cat instead more powerful. CatDog 3001 is one of 4 Nicktoons about the future to appear on New Year's Eve 1999, and while not in my top 2, it puts its own dystopian spin on the future. The Island is about the domesticated duo getting stranded on a traffic island as if it were a tropical island, and growing hungry and delusional, and it's still one of their more laid-back adventures. I believe the Hawaiian theming is doing a lot of the work. Climb Every CatDog is another big adventure one, where Cat is, with no strings attached, an aspirational hero, as he tries to claim Mount Nearburg instead of his rival, timely Lara Croft reference. Spoilers for a 25-year-old Nicktoon, he doesn't fully succeed, but you have to appreciate the effort. Brother's Day is a Gift of the Magi plot, where Cat and Dog trade some of their most prized possessions for gifts for one another. It's an "aw, they care about each other" plot, which you are going to be eating up whenever they come into view. Vexed of Kin is the penultimate episode of the series, and took the time to craft a story around CatDog's newly regained relationship with their adoptive parents. A new layer is added to the show's dynamic that I'm happy was explored at least once. I'll gladly take it. The Ballad of Ol' 159 introduces us to Peter Hainan's fursona and throws him into a ton of slapstick as he sings the origin story of Mr. Sunshine and how he grew to be so miserable. Just what I needed, more dimension to this character, and more of a reason to sympathize with him. Fishing for Trouble might be an unpopular choice, but for me, there's a morbid fascination kind of appeal. It is disgusting seeing Cat walk through their body to try and find Dog's pet fish that he ate, but it feels like horror more than anything. On the subject of eating, A Dog Ate My Homework was an overdue assignment. Do something with that classic phrase that makes sense in the world of CatDog. We see Dog have a battle of conscience over whether he should be eating all this homework, and Rancid Rabbit bomb on stage. Any embarrassment he goes through is still somewhat cathartic. Surfin' CatDog brings us back to a beachy setting, this time an actual beach. Cat boasts his way into surfing the deadliest wave this side of the big one, and it's awesome to see him and Dog pull through. It always feels like summer when you put this on. And they mention New Zealand, so A+, you're almost as good as Brotown. CatDog Divided is the one where they finally get separated, but it's through a suspicious magic trick. This is always one to bring up due to its show-shaking premise, but it gets added points for going into a more action-packed direction than you'd expect. Rinky Dinks is an ice hockey episode. You can't have an old cartoon without the ice hockey episode. They whip up a plot that takes advantage of CatDog actually having a small friend circle, a small but dedicated one, each member with their own gags to go around. CatDogumentary has a ton of fun with the inherent strangeness of CatDog as a species. Lola brings a lot of pain upon herself as she scurries to make a documentary about them filled with bogus facts that still end up winning over the audience at the premiere. It's a silly idea fest with a silly payoff. My favorite episode, It's a Wonderful Half-Life, mostly takes place in a dream where Cat and Dog wonder what their lives would be like if they were separate beings. Cat has all the money he could ever want, while Dog lives the life of a humble tramp, but even in their wildest dreams, they know they can't be separated. It's really nice underneath the dreary shroud hanging over the dream. Now, do you want a long worst list? Here you go, here's your long and detailed worst list. Guess Who's Going to Be Dinner is one of those where Cat or Dog give in to their instincts, but unlike the examples I listed on the best list, this one forgets to have fun. It's just Cat tormenting Winslow and trying to eat him for 11 minutes, just being dark and twisted because it can be. When you're feeling bad for Winslow, something's not right. Talking Turkey is also just bitter and aggressive because it can be. Cat and Dog have to protect a turkey from being eaten on Thanksgiving. I have never celebrated this holiday, so there's little it can do to interest me in that department. Dog the Not So Mighty is a sequel to Dog the Mighty that doesn't do much except retread the ground of its predecessor. Dog becomes famous superhero, Cat gets ignored and tossed around. It's the same thing, the only addition is the word sexy. Escape from the Deep End is one of many Rancid Rabbit episodes where his mere presence makes the entertainment value of the whole show sink like a rock. Choice of phrases because this is set at a swimming pool, but it feels more like a prison, for the sake of dramatic effect of course, but it still makes the episode feel more rancid. CatDog Squared is about these two con men pretending to be a cat dog so they can burgle CatDog in the night after befriending them. I know, it's a dumb plan, and it's gonna make you mad for picking up on clues, which is an awful feeling for any story with a mystery element. Canine Mutiny is a parody of the Cane Mutiny. Haven't seen it? What are you doing with your life? On its own, this episode just has no weight to it. Cat's just a jerk to Dog, Mervis, and Sunshine for a long time, and it turns out they were just in a park fountain the whole time. I've seen a lot of womp womps in my day, but this womp's among the hardest. Beware of Cliff has him change his ways after being stuck in a gym for days. The lengths they go to make him grow aren't necessary in a status quo show because it's just gonna make this shift back to normal more jarring and unsatisfying. It's not impossible for these greaseball archetypes to learn something at the end of one story, and Shriek and Lube episodes prove that here. I feel bad with how little Cliff was given. The Geekers is about Cat forming his own gang to stand up against the Greasers, but it ends up being just as bad with Cat gleefully bullying children. That's a deep low to sink to, and the kind of thing that'll ruin any character's reputation. The Geekers offers a harsh lesson in the psychology of bullying, I'll give it that, but it comes at the cost of the protagonist's integrity. Flee or Die has a disadvantage in premise alone. Does anyone actually get excited for Flea episodes? The fleas usually look gross up close and as clusters, hair forest backgrounds are disconcerting, and you're just watching the characters itch and make the problem worse. This CatDog episode has all the worst Flea episode tropes on display, so it goes pretty low. Dopes on Slopes is filler content, and I don't like using that terminology often. That's what it is though, one of the season 2 shorts that doesn't do anything you haven't seen before, just a ski resort this time. This may seem like a harsh rating, but even with a lot of bad 11-minute episodes, there can be more reasons to go back to them. Back to School is downright despicable. Want to do an episode about Cat going back to school? Fine. Want the conflict to be it's not as good as he remembered? Okie dokie Loki. Want the resolution to have a here we go again ending? I can give you that. But the reasons Cat gets dragged back into education are flimsy, the jokes about how hellish school are have no cushioning, it's just portraying the lives of the target audience as miserable, and the fact that they made Cat's school crush into Cliff's boyfriend is just ridiculous for so many reasons. Party Animal is all about a party that you never see. How thrilling for the visual medium of animation. Everyone ditches Cat's party for Winslow's, and like Cat, we're left in the dark about what's going on in there. It's unsatisfying in a way that's hard to describe, but I'll do it anyway. This whole episode is teasing you. You want to see a colourful, stimulating party? Too bad, here's a roller coaster causing destruction that you still can't see. Workforce is dull. Just dull. That's why it's so much worse than stuff like Flee or Die and Back to School. You've got CatDog working in this dreary factory, and Dog getting promoted and abusing his power. Well out of character, but I'd care more if this episode had any emotion rather than passive boredom. Cone Dog is a creative one, I'll give it that, but it's no better than Workforce. Dog gets a cone of shame which Cat uses to learn everyone's secrets. They could have done something personable with it, but no, straight to this making Cat ruler of the world. A big reason I had such a negative reaction to this one was that it was so close to the end of the show. They couldn't help but sneak in one more episode about Cat becoming the show's main villain. After all he's been through, he's still gonna be like this? Teeth for Two is the worst episode of CatDog, and one of the very worst episodes of any TV show I've ever seen. First of all, Dog's poor dental hygiene affecting Cat is only an invention for this episode. They share a body, but this is cheap. Second, Dog going way out of character with intentions to worsen Cat's teeth. He's the friendliest character on the show, but if he can do stuff like this, then what does that mean? Third, the visuals of rotting teeth were the wrong choice to frame an episode of a show like this around. Something like Ren and Stimpy can roll with it, but CatDog doesn't have the skill set to push the envelope any further than that. It nudges it, yes, with the graphic imagery they shove in, but this show isn't designed to be a graphic gross-out show. That's what bothers me most about Teeth for Two. It wants to be a different show, but can't help but be CatDog about it. And fourth, a here we go again ending that leaves you with a visual just as tasteless as the rest of the episode. And now that the worst list is done, I'll give you a simple impression of this show. Picture your least favorite episode of pre-movie SpongeBob. Now imagine if that was 80% of the run. That's what CatDog is like. It's got the right pieces to be a cartoon classic, but fumbles the ball. I want to say it's this underrated gem because there are some good episodes and jokes tucked away, but it's a real button pusher. I can't recommend it to anyone looking for something sweet and undemanding, not even my favorite episodes because those still tend to have show-wide problems. A lot of people expected me to hate this show and were hoping I'd go easier on it, and I understand why. Its reputation has gone up and down, and it's in a down at the moment. I'm not as mad with this show as I am with how it was produced. Quickly, and forced onto a production team that didn't take the project seriously at first. If it wasn't rushed out the door and filled with the apathy of a group of writers that wanted to be in another room, then it could have been better. Maybe not a NickToon classic, but the work environment wouldn't have rubbed off on the audience the wrong way. But back to the title of the video. What is there to like about CatDog? I don't want to leave it rhetorical, so here's a quick list of positive qualities to this show. The voice performances, especially those of the leads, Jim Cummings and Tom Kenny. Not career-defining roles in my opinion, but they still brought their A-game. The brotherly love angle is well-meaning, it can be rewarding to see Cat glimpse success, the jokes can be funny, if in a dark and bleak way, and the movie ends up making the world of Nierberg a slightly more hopeful place. I'd like all this to be what I take away from CatDog. It scratched my left eye out and gave me rabies, but that's the price to pay for unconditional love.
We'll be right back to Chalk Zone on Nickelodeon.
Oh, you can be Lisa's.